Good morning, everyone. I'm Peter Murray, Curator-in-Chief at NLA, and very pleased to welcome you to the launch of NLA's latest digital report, London Design Capital. So the report, which you can now download from our website, looks at the current impact of Brexit and COVID-19 on London's status as a global design hub and evaluates the steps London can take to maintain its internationally renowned reputation for construction and design skills in a very uncertain future. And it brings together current experience of business leaders through interviews, as well as an NLA member survey, so that we can understand how the export of skills and services has been affected by those two events. And at the same time, we're revisiting our original London Design Capital research, and we made some recommendations back in 2017, just after the UK's vote to leave the EU. And so we've sort of assessed how things have changed since then. And the research in the document you download, you can see is supported by a showcase of international projects collected from a call for entries through the NLA membership. And these are being delivered around the world by London-based practices, illustrating both the reach of the capital skills and the breadth of the expertise of consultants working in London. And I'd like to thank our City Dialogue champions who have helped to make this all happen. And they are ACOM, KPF and U&I. And also I'd like to thank our researcher, Sarah Yates. So today I'm delighted to be joined by Asif Khan, who's founder of Asif Khan Architects, Annalie Thompson, a partner at Grimshaw, and Philip Breeze, managing partner, Weston Williamson and Partners. So all three practices do a lot of work around the world. And so they're going to be sharing their experience and insight into working internationally during Brexit and the pandemic, and discussing how London can maintain its role as a global design hub. And so, as usual, don't forget you can post your questions to our speakers through the Q&A button. And so please do that while people are speaking. So we've got a few to come to when we get to our discussion at the end. So first of all, I'd like to ask Asif Khan to start the proceedings with his insights into the impacts of these two events on the industry. Asif, over to you.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you everyone who's joining us today. It's very nice to be part of this launch, and I hope the book is a great success and the campaign. I thought I'd share some thoughts and some images from work that I've been doing over the years. My studio, I'm going to just share my screen, was established in 2007 as a kind of studio, and so since then, and it was very much a one-man band, let's say, it's now 25 people strong. We are based in East London. We sort of set up the studio always to be a very agile operation, and it's something which was really baked into it from the beginning. You may know this, Peter, very well. This is in Littlehampton, and even in these days, we were working on laptops, and this idea of being out and about and able to sort of to work on the move really was tested to the limit and kind of became the normal the last couple of years. So we had this idea always of because of my background, I guess, London is a multicultural melting pot. I'm part of that, but I've always felt as a practitioner that I wanted to reach out and have an ability to work across the world, really. What we have in London is the most amazing educational design establishments. For example, Royal College of Art, the Bartlett, the Architectural Association. I had a great opportunity in my life to study at those, and at the Prince of Wales Institute of Architecture. And those, I'm sort of one of thousands of amazing graduates who come out every year who we should be tapping into more. And it's sort of an interesting point is I always feel, and these are some of the projects we've done at London Olympics. This is in the Sochi Winter Olympics. That's our office dog. I always feel that we need to find a way for our larger practices here in London, as well as our kind of developers and our commissioning bodies, to tap into all of that talent that's being produced year by year here in London. For me, the international community did tap into that, and I had this kind of great opportunities, in Russia, in Korea, which is the Hyundai Pavilion, so collaborating with the car manufacturer, and European Space Agency, and Surrey Nanosystems. So I sort of got into this mode of practice where I took pleasure in bringing amazing people together, basically, and the creativity came out of the kind of diverse relationships and really taking every opportunity, not as just a commercial one, but one that's an opportunity to kind of progress the art form and progress my way of thinking about the world and each other. Most recently, for the last 5 years, we've been working in Dubai on the Dubai Expo, and it's a fantastic project which I hope you can all visit in October 2021 when it finally opens. These are the entrance gates to the Expo, which are based on a kind of Arabic mashrabiyah, but reimagined as a lightweight carbon fiber structure, which we spent 3 years developing. Started to sort of appear on Instagram now. It's I hope you get a chance to walk through these gates, which are the entranceway to the Expo. And these are really demonstrative of kind of a collaboration between German scientists, German aeronautical engineers and manufacturers, Middle Eastern civil engineers and architects, and our London-based studio, which is, I think, quite a young studio and quite a diverse studio, which quite a mixture of not only race and gender, but also of age. And that idea of youth, and you see here actually a project by Grimshaw's in the foreground, and our projects are in the background there. There's our gate portals, the arrivals area to Expo, which is this elliptical structure in the background, and then we've actually done all of the public realm as well. So this sort of idea of working internationally could only have been facilitated by an approach we took to kind of create global partnerships. One of the challenges of working internationally has been ensuring that the quality that we demand can be realized locally. And so we found that by leveraging sort of our studio's creativity, and that's very much a London-based thing that has value abroad, with local teams with tried and tested kind of delivery abilities, such as ACOM, such as Jacobs, who we're working with at the moment. ACOM we completed this public realm with, and a fantastic collaborator. And it's opened a lot of other doors for us. So, this is Guggenheim Helsinki, which is a competition we were the only team in the UK to be shortlisted for. This is a project we're currently working on in Sharjah for a client, and this is a project which was slowed down during COVID-19. Why? Because the client is the Minister of Health of Sharjah, he was very busy actually, so he couldn't get his museum built. But it's been a fantastic project. Again, international collaboration in terms of materials and material research. It's a museum of manuscripts. And then what's beginning to happen is, like the football, we're coming home, really. So after sort of this, decade of, I think, building reputation and building know-how about how to deliver and both on people's expectations and to kind of deliver ideas of world-class quality, we started to get asked at home to do the same. So this is a Museum of London, which we've been working on for the last 4 years, and will be complete in 2024. It's the largest cultural project in Europe, and we're collaborating with Stanton Williams on this scheme and Julian Harrop Architects. Just a few glimpses of the interior. This is going to be the largest covered public space, new public space in London. It's the size of Oxford Circus, and a basement that you could probably fit a jumbo jet in. I mean, you really have to see it to believe it. Everything that we've kind of learned internationally has really kind of prepared us very well for COVID, and for Brexit didn't really affect us because we already had a lot of international projects. COVID, the agile working method, using laptops, using remote desktoping and remote servers, it's stuff that we've been doing from the beginning, and I think a lot of younger practices have been doing that. Final kind of thought, really, after kind of my journey and this kind of moment of coming home and getting fantastic clients now, British Land, working with we work with British Land on a great project in Canada Waters. We're working, we've been working with Lend-Lease on their Euston Oversight development. We were kind of part of that team that won that. All sorts of interesting collaborations now. I think it's really important, not only for the design studios to be taking advantage of this great pool of design talent in London, but also for the developers and the engineers and the public bodies to use that design talent to build what the future of London is. A truly diverse city is one which reflects its inhabitants. And I think that means not just race, not just gender, and I mentioned it before, but age. And we saw in the football how amazing that team was, that young team that brought us kind of so close to that moment of victory. I think youth has got to be something that we embrace in London, and that's going to keep us at the cutting edge. I think relying on old ideas and tried and trusted, purely commercial approaches are the only thing that diminishes our creativity and diminishes our ability to lead the world in design. So that's my kind of wish to you all: support youth, support young voices and young designers, and let them help us lead the way into the future of what London can be. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Asif. And I just repeat, you can download the report, and we'll put a link in the chat so that you can do it there, but the link directs you to our website. So thank you very much for that. And now our next speaker is Anneliek Thompson, and she's a partner at Grimshaw, obviously doing work in Abu Dhabi, just sure, but also a lot of projects around the world. So Anneliek, over to you.
Thank you very much, Peter. And thanks for welcoming me and inviting me here today. I'm sure a lot of things that we've been thinking about and been affected by and so on are actually quite similar to what Asif just mentioned. And yeah, very excited about the Dubai Pavilion as well. Grimshaw have enjoyed working internationally for a really long time, and we have bases in several different regions globally with around 600 people. And I guess the main difference last year has been the lack of ability to travel, meet clients, have face-to-face meetings, see sites, and present ideas kind of in person. And we have seen, as Asif alluded to there as well, that there's been a bit of hesitancy and delay in clients going ahead with projects, as well as the sort of amount of quantity of inquiries kind of dropped a little bit during the last year. There was a bit of a shift in focus towards longer term projects, as well as people sort of revisiting their plans in light of new emerging trends and sort of what's going on. So that's quite interesting. I think, people, being a bit more thoughtful about the future, I suppose, is what lies behind it. We saw this across all the regions we have offices, so the effects are more related to the pandemic than Brexit for us, at least so far. The effects of Brexit will probably take a bit longer to become evident, as things sort of start settling down kind of post-pandemic. But so far, we still feel very much that the opportunities are there and that there's a desire to work with us abroad from the UK. We're still seeing this having something very valuable to offer, and that we're competitive. For example, our Paris office is busier than ever, which is really great. And we're still seeing invitations to participate and work across the rest of Europe as well. There have been some unexpected challenges and opportunities along the way. The result of taking kind of location out of the equation has had some really interesting results. Of course, there's lots of negatives when you lose that kind of personal face-to-face interaction. I'm really looking forward to that coming back. But kind of contrary to what you might expect, these challenges have actually seen some really positive results. We've sort of fast forwarded some of the aspects of the way we work and also some of the kind of what we do and how we convey information. We're more agile. We've always used technology, and we have a really great support team from IT and the kind of that sort of connectivity in terms of digital. But the sort of the use of digital design tools, that design technology, and the skills to use them, for example, has really kind of leapt up to another level, as well as the sort of collaboration tools that we use. So big leaps in that, I think. Global collaboration has also seen some changes. Instead of sort of being isolated, actually, we've become a lot more connected globally. And have been using also really great communication tools to then collaborate, work together, AR, virtual reality, things like kind of where you can sketch, come together, over using computers and so on, all sorts of locations has been kind of quite an interesting and new thing that we've been using a lot more. And the new constraint really is time zone and not related to physical space and location. We've been doing a lot more cross-office collaboration on design development and sort of sharing experience and knowledge, as well as the sort of operational parts of our business globally. So the experience of last year has really actually been really additive. Once we also are able to sort of engage face-to-face more, I think what this means really is that we're even more able to draw the best of our talent together and to drive better design outcomes and thinking. London has sort of for a long time been a hub for design and innovation globally, and this reputation is still there when it comes to kind of client feedback. We still need to drive innovation and creativity. We can't kind of rely on the past. The strength of this innovation comes from collective talent that is drawn to live and work here. There are other aspects too. Geographic location, I think, always plays a part. We're in a great time zone to work in other regions, and there's so many places that are accessible from here. Language also plays a part. English is accessible to many internationals. It's really a language of business. But skills is the really key element. I think we have great schools of architecture, a great tradition of innovation and design, and this has drawn talent here over time. And to be successful, you really need to have the best talent within your organization, regardless of where you're working. London is a great mix of cultures and people, really diverse. Our office is incredibly diverse, and this makes working internationally more accessible to us. Our team speaks 50 different languages here in London, and we have a really broad knowledge base and backgrounds, a great network of contacts, and people are really keen to work internationally. In fact, many of our recruits want to work at Grimshaw because we have that kind of opportunity, or we offer the opportunity to work and travel and relocate abroad. There's still some concerns ongoing, of course. We're still in a sort of period of uncertainty. There are lots of things going on, people asking questions, where's the workplace sector going, what's going on, what's happening to high speeds, climate change, all these sorts of things. But this sort of disruptive change generates innovation, and that is really exciting, and you kind of embrace it. Lots of new things will come out of this, I think. Technology, communications, ways of working and living. Really exciting times, actually. Bold, focused design can shape, a really bright future if you kind of embrace it and go with it. To maintain a status of a global design hub, London just needs to continue to innovate, seek progressive design, human contact, exchange of ideas, exploring ways of working, and adapting to new things. So continuing, kind of that evolution, we can really drive transformation and explore design and stay ahead, I think.
Thank you very much indeed. So I just remind everyone you can post any questions to our speakers using the Q&A button, which we'll get to in the end. But before that, our next speaker is Philip Breeze, who's managing partner at Weston Williamson Partners, delivering large-scale infrastructure projects around the world. So Philip, over to you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Some great insight there so far from NLA and Asif, which I'll now sort of build on. Thanks for the invitation to speak, and from what I've seen of the report so far, it looks a fantastic insight, and look forward to delving into some of that detail further. So well done to everybody in contributing and pulling that together. Weston Williamson and Partners are a global architecture practice, an urban design practice specialising in infrastructure and mixed-use projects. And we've been based out of London for over 35 years. We now have studios in Manchester, Sydney, and Melbourne and Toronto in Canada. And we're globally around about 175 people all in at the moment. Over the years, we've designed many projects around the world, and more recently, we've focused around cities and cultures that are perhaps more similar to ourselves from the UK, which has proved beneficial at this more immediate point in time. I'm going to briefly touch my few words on two main areas. The first of those being places and projects, and then the second of those being around people, and sharing our recent experiences and thoughts during that Brexit transition, and indeed the pandemic over the last 18 months particularly. International working brings obviously great opportunity and excitement, but equally it does bring quite a lot of challenges logistically and operationally, which needs to be understood for anyone engaging in this exciting marketplace. Just prior to the pandemic in 2019, we were awarded the International Queen's Award for Enterprise, and this was in recognition of successfully exporting our experience in high quality city shaping design around the world. Our success proves that you don't have to be a huge company to work and sell abroad. But if you do have a specific specialism and an expert in your field in a certain area, there really are great opportunities to go and find. Just a personal anecdote, my sort of journey in the international arena actually started in the mid-90s when I was fresh out of architecture school, couldn't find a job for love nor money in the UK. I believed I had talent. So I took my rucksack out to Hong Kong and I knocked on Foster Associates' door in Wan Chai. And I was fortunate enough to land a job at that time working on Chet Lap Kok Airport. And to this day, it still remains the best commute I have had on a boat every morning out along Hong Kong Harbour, do my day's work and then coming back, and to be experiencing that infrastructure that was being built, the suspension bridges to connect Chet Lap Kok back to Hong Kong Island, which I'm sure many of you have now been on that amazing piece of infrastructure. So that whetted my appetite, and I suppose the rest is history in my interest in working internationally as well as from London. So moving on to places and projects, identifying international opportunities to pursue new work does need good research, and it needs to align with your business expertise and your culture. Otherwise, the experience can very quickly become overly challenging. We find typically partnering with local architects or other specialist consultants to share loads and experience and expertise is absolutely key. Establishing a model of how the work will be delivered, whether that's locally, whether that's from London, or whether it's a combination of both, is key. And we have worked over the years across all those methods to suit different clients and different geographies, different project types. And we've continued to do that, particularly over this recent period with our work in Australia, our work in Canada, and actually some work in Kosovo, which we've never worked in before, which is quite interesting. The pandemic inevitably has forced an evaluation of this cross-continent and country working, particularly around travel, where we're engaged. This, give or take, has obviously stopped in this period for the main, and we expect going forward it will probably become significantly less as we come out of the emerge from the pandemic, with increased focus on our own sustainability targets as a business to reduce our carbon footprint and emissions. Working in countries, as I said, that are culturally closer to the UK and London does have its advantages in doing business and efficiencies. But the time zones are challenging sometimes and have to be managed successfully to maximize the benefits. For example, cross-working we find is much easier with our Toronto studio because you've got a half a day overlap, which really does help. Whereas in Australia, it's, you've got to work a lot harder because the days essentially are polar opposite in their working time. And being available from London with your clients at their beck and call, you obviously need to be, so that does need careful management. We've also, as well, in terms of places and projects, we've supported global opportunities to reach out to our new markets, particularly around young talent as well, sharing our insights in how we work here and the experience we have. And we recently contributed to a UK exhibition at the Seoul Biennale with a visionary piece of work considering London as a polycentric city continuing beyond the confines of the Greenbelt into 2050 with further efficient infrastructure and connectivity. And that's been a great marketplace in doing that at that particular Biennale. So to move on to people, culture develops inevitably and evolves over time, and we're coming up in the next year or two to our 35 years anniversary as a practice. And our culture, which we work particularly hard at, has grown organically over that period and does remain at the front and foremost of our business, originating out of our London base. Transporting this culture to our international studios remains very important, but again is another challenge. The model we tend to run is sending members of our senior management team to establish a foothold in these new places where the projects are, typically on the back of a project opportunity. They then take with them the DNA and the values of our London base. And then as they begin to grow those opportunities, we can start to obviously recruit locally and then begin to embed that DNA into those new starters. And in turn, that then, which is really exciting, allows more people from our London studio to join them, to travel out, bring their experiences from here, go and experience those new cultures, whether it be for a few weeks, for a few months, or perhaps sometimes indefinitely, which we have with some of our people that have gone and are successfully working abroad and don't look like coming back at the moment. And equally, that mechanism works in return. So as we build those studios around the world, the opportunity for those people to come and work in our London studio equally is so exciting, and understand everything and work within the design capital and everything it has to offer. Red tape can be a problem and needs to be worked through around visas and the various models around that. It's really exciting to be able to offer these opportunities to the right candidates that then can take that on board. I'm encouraged to see through the report that it's been highlighted as well that the current direction of travel by the ARB and other global organisations to recognise overseas qualifications by architects more is really, really important. And this is a challenge that we have with people coming to work for us in London, where you pitch their things against their qualifications against the RIBA. So that's really, really encouraging, as the report highlights. And often we do find that countries are giving out a message to say, come and work with us, we want your expertise, which you sort of get drawn into. But then at times you can find when you establish an opportunity there, the red tape that underlines that in terms of accreditation as a businesses and licenses, or even as individuals, make it then hard to actually carry through on that. And it can be very time consuming to work that through in the initial periods of time working in new jurisdictions. Since Brexit, we have seen a healthy amount of EU applications continuing into our recruit inbox. But what we do see is quite a high proportion of those have addresses that are actually London-based. And that is something actually prior to Brexit that we did see as well. So that trend at the moment seems to be relatively consistent. Affordability of living in London, again, as I think the report touches on a little bit, is equally another ongoing challenge, particularly for our younger staff. They want to be immersed in all the incredible benefits that the design capital obviously brings, which is great, but the rents in the city are causing some to live elsewhere now, that we are seeing with our staff. Even prior to the pandemic, we were seeing some of our staff moving out to stay with parents and then travelling in for up to 2 hours into the city and then going away again each night. And I think the pandemic has caused more of our younger staff to leave their rented London accommodation and move outside at the moment. And so it's going to be interesting to see, as we embrace as a practice an agile work culture going forward, how that settles back down in the coming months. It leads on to some interesting ideas for us, perhaps as a practice, that we might consider of investing then in residential property to complete sort of coming back into the wider cycle as a business, that we could perhaps offer subsidised fixed term rents for employees, and being an added benefit and attraction to join Weston Williamson, and for UK people and international students, although they may have their own views about us as an employer being their landlord, I wonder. We also see the benefits of international university relations. They are really important to share and promote global experiences and views to attract the best talent. And just prior to the pandemic, we did a bit of work to help increase the reach and promotion of the RIBA globally, which Chris Williamson was part of as his role at that time of RIBA International President. And we set up a series of live stream design workshops with students initially from Santiago University in Chile, where Peter Bishop was out leading some design units. We collaborated with some other UK architects, and that went really well. The technology at that time was patchy. We didn't have the benefit of the fluency of Teams and Zoom as we have now, but you know, there are great opportunities, and further shreds went on to be done with Hong Kong students and in India students, which was great. So just pulling all that back in with a few parting thoughts, in no particular order of priority. Find the right way of international working that does suit your business, the sort of clients you want, and the projects you want to be involved working with. Cross-continent working has never been easier from a technological point of view, but make sure the client and the project are right for you. We haven't seen any particular obvious changes to how we overlap with our international projects from London. And I'd agree with some of the earlier comments that, you know, I think in areas we have become more efficient, and in the design collaboration, we've become more experienced with that. And due to the pandemic, I still think the ultimate thing is clients want to see experienced people on the ground. So that really is a key important thing to really still focus on. London's design culture, heritage and education establishments I expect to remain an incredible draw for students and people wanting to work in the city. But ensuring accessibility and affordability remain real challenges for all of us. And we need to do more to reach out to a wider and more diverse range of people to bring that talent into the profession. And I think it is really encouraging the work that's now going on with the RIBA accredited apprenticeship courses, of which we're involved at both levels, to bring in students and younger people that wouldn't have had that accessibility before. So just to finish, having a specialism is really, really important. Bringing your thinking and innovation remains highly regarded globally and sought after by clients. Educating those clients and others in the added value that we can bring, is fundamental. And we need to understand that, because otherwise there is always the danger that they'll think, well, I may as well just stay local and employ local architects. So international working, exciting, and yeah, there's my thoughts just to pass into the discussion. Thank you, Peter.
Great, thank you very much, Philip, too. So as I said before, please do put your questions. We have a few questions coming in at the moment, but there's a couple of things to ask our panelists. Asif and maybe Anneli would like to comment on this as well. I mean, Abu Dhabi seems quite very interesting. I mean, your project seems very interesting indeed, both your projects, but there are also other UK architects, quite a good showing of UK architects at Abu Dhabi. So Foster's are doing sustainability building, I think, and others as well. Are you going out there regularly and seeing what's happening, Asif?
Yeah, one of the difficulties of COVID has just been the difficulty of transportation, and so a number of my team members instead have been stationed there, who were originally involved in leading those projects over the years. So whereas I used to go every month or 6 weeks for a few days, I'm not able to do that right now just because of the quarantine times. But I think that's going to I think Philip mentioned it in a way that kind of face-to-face time with the clients is really important, and the way we try to operate is really to I guess with sort of complete sincerity, and try to when we pledge to achieve something for a client at the beginning of the project, I sort of take it on as a personal quest, really, and make sure that I'm answerable to it until the end. But that is challenging, being one step removed, not being able to actually get there and inspect stuff on site and kind of tell them when things aren't going so well, or but yeah, there's a lot going on there, and perhaps Anneli, you could speak. I'll hand it to you.
Yeah, it's the same. I mean, basically, that kind of lack of travel, the reduction in travel is a thing. Dubai is great. It's looking really great. We're really lucky we have an office in Dubai, so we have some people who can go and see things. The project's delayed, so actually some of the planting and so on has really come on in the intervening period. So actually, I think the outcome when it's open and people get to see it is going to be even better. I think it looks really good, actually, and there's lots of really interesting buildings there, of course. So yeah, keen. I want to go out there and see it myself, when it's open. But we're getting some really great images from it on site. So
can I maybe?
Go on.
Sorry.
No,
I was going to add
yeah.
Interesting point, Anneli, and also you mentioned Foster's and ourselves, and also Hopkins are like heavily involved in the Expo project. But the scenario was so interesting because you had a situation where a practice of my size was able to compete directly for those large projects against Foster's and against Grimshaw's and so on. I found it fascinating that a client was able to put the kind of to place equal amount of trust in those practices on the basis of all of their creativity, and see the value in all of them despite their all being at different sizes. And in the end, so we did a mobility pavilion proposal in competition, but Foster's won it and Grimshaw's won sustainability. But we ended up with the public realm, and it was I would love to bring that way of thinking back to London, where it's not about how big you are. We'll find a way to help you to deliver these things. What we want are your ideas and how you can, what imagination you can bring to transform this place. And this was just amazing to compete in this way.
Yeah, very interesting.
Sorry, Emily.
That's good. It's a really good point. I think that kind of mixture of kind of, you know, bigger and smaller practices and sort of generation of new ideas. I mean, some people are really open to, you know, collaboration and kind of mixing teams and kind of having, you know, bringing the best of everything together. And I think you know, it's a really great thing because you're exploring things, you know, what getting the unexpected to come out, I think is a huge benefit. And yeah, I totally agree that you know, you shouldn't just kind of rely on, you know, the safe pair of hands or what someone's done before or whatever. I think, you know, it's for all of us to kind of keep it fresh and innovative and exciting and, you know, do new things. So yeah, totally agree.
Great. Okay, thank you. So before we just go to the questions, Philip, I just ask you, you've talked about still getting quite a lot of requests from Europe, but I mean, it's quite interesting. There is a chart actually in the report which shows changing nature of exports between 2016 and 2019, post the referendum, and there certainly seems to be a shift of more work. I mean, the States is growing quite a lot. South Africa has grown quite a lot. China too, whereas you know, France has dropped off a bit, and other European countries but stayed fairly much the same. But there was, for instance, 2017 large amounts of work being done in the Netherlands, and that's dropped off quite a lot. So it's quite interesting to see where those shifts are. There does seem to be a sort of shift to more work outside Europe, but you're not seeing that.
Do you mean work outside Europe in terms of projects?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we are. I think it's about where you decide to really, you know, put your focus and research. There is a lot of opportunity, you know, I think in and around sort of Scandinavia that we see. I think in North America, particularly, and Toronto, and the eastern seaboard of Canada, which is why we've, you know, decided to go and put our feet on the ground there. And it's all about really looking at where those big commitments, you know, in the fields of work we work in, of where, you know, the projected government spend, you know, on these projects is. And it's, you know, you are looking quite a few years ahead to then see how those projects and those budgets are starting to be, you know, filtered down on to what projects. And I think that's true as well of, you know, the Australian market. So I think overall, you know, there is quite a lot going on. Jumping back to America, I suppose it will be interesting to see with, you know, Biden's unlocking and pledge for these, I can't remember how many billion, you know, funding he's putting into infrastructure, and how much of that is actually going into mobility and sort of buildings in infrastructure. That's to be seen over the coming years. But yeah, you've got to pick and choose really, and then go with what you want for your business.
Great. Okay, well, let's go to Q&A panel now. This one, I guess, is there's lots of answers to this, but how can new practices break into the international market? So, Asif, I think you described the sort of maybe a progression through Olympics. That was very high profile for you. What was that the sort of key driver of your move into international market?
Actually, one I think big effect was graduated from the AA. I had this project that, you know, in Littlehampton, which is a great boost, and I got that on the basis of having done a public talk about my student work and so on in 2006 or something. But then this kind of financial crisis hit, and there just was no work. Like where I expected to get work in 2007, 2008, it just didn't appear. There was nothing. So I decided to kind of go down a scale and start working kind of on really pushing innovation in design, basically. So at a smaller scale, furniture and artworks and so on. And I sort of took out a loan and I went and showed that work in Milan. And what was very interesting at the Milan Salone, what was very interesting is that when I was showing there, the Design Museum from London, which I'm now deputy chair of, like many years later, but the Design Museum in London, a group of curators came and saw my work in Milan and said, oh, this is good, we'll bring it back to London. It's this thing about, we don't always trust, in London we don't always trust what we see here. We kind of want to see something elsewhere and bring it. I think that's the same internationally as well. Everyone wants a bit of what everyone else, what exists elsewhere. So that first moment of exhibiting internationally gave me this taste and I think pleasure in having a new perspective on my own work from others, from the Italians or the Japanese. I showed work in Tokyo, you know, elsewhere again. You know, so I think that's where it began really, and I kind of then got picked up to show stuff in Miami, and then one work in New York. We were doing work in Los Angeles at the moment. It's sort of these things, I think once you've got the taste for it, like Philip's commute in Hong Kong, once you have this taste for this and you realize that those voices are actually important to you, and you know, new perspectives on yourself and where your place is in the world, I think are transformative. Like we grow through those. So I'm just constantly searching for that opportunity to evolve, really. And I find that by coming back and going away, it gives me that chance.
Yeah. Anneli, I suppose, I mean, Grimshaw has been working globally for quite a few years, haven't they, really? Probably before your time. I mean, I don't know how whether you remember how it started.
How do we start working internationally? Again, it's sort of, we were, you know, we had opportunities, things came up, we participated in competitions. I think, you know, the fact that we kind of evolved a bit, we probably are able to think more sort of in a concentrated and focused way about how to go out there into the world and engage ourselves. I think, you know, some of it can be, you know, a bit random luck occasionally when you start out, but as you sort of mature in your understanding and engagement in international markets, it's about really not thinking about yourself and what your practice is good at and what you bring, which is additive to that country. You know, what are you bringing that, you know, local architects might not have, or what are the new ideas? How can you draw together your experience to sort of contribute in a different way? So I think it's that thing of knowing yourself and actually understanding the country and the regions that you're looking at. What do they need? What do they want? What are clients looking for there? And I think those sorts of things come with maybe having done it for a bit of time.
Thanks. Philip, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I think just briefly for I think there are sort of probably two main tried and tested sort of ways, and I'd say one of them is, as a smaller, younger practice, is jumping on the coattails of a bigger practice, perhaps such as us or Grimshaw, and understanding what that added value proposition is that collectively you can take and be an enhanced offer for whatever opportunity you're chasing. So that's one way through, I suppose, defined either, you know, opportunistic kind of pitching or through tendering. And I think inevitably, although it's, you know, we all know the challenges with it, but international competitions, whether you're doing it independently or again combined. If I remember rightly, that's how the founders at WW first first went abroad, they won an international competition to design a laboratory in Boston, Massachusetts, which they won and then panicked, like I think a lot of people do, but they made it happen. And then from there, I think that whet the appetite. And then we went out to China more in the sort of 90s, and have since, continued to pick up competition wins. Unfortunately, more of them don't then progress than do. We had a great one a little after the earthquake in Haiti that we did totally from London, but designed a great little pavilion for Digicel, the telecommunications people. We had the Science City in Egypt, in Cairo, 2 or 3 years ago that we won, and we thought that great opportunity, but that's unfortunately just due to the political situation has got its brakes on at the moment. So they would be my thoughts, Peter.
Great, thank you very much. Now we've got somebody who's asking, has Brexit had a direct impact on your existing international business relationships? And is it harder to build new relationships? Impact of Brexit, anybody? Or
I think we contribute as a start with that. I think what we've seen in the sort of last year is really it's been a bit slower in terms of international work, but it's more related to the pandemic, is how we're feeling. I think the effects of Brexit is going to take a little bit longer to really understand. We, as a practice, haven't seen Brexit as being kind of significant issues yet. We're still invited to, European competitions. We're still seeing opportunities there, and we're still feeling, quite welcome to take part and seeing that we kind of have something to offer. So it's not an obvious kind of Brexit has caused us a sort of major problem that we've seen yet. It may come to later on once kind of the pandemic issues sort of settles down a little bit.
Interesting. We found just to add to that, we found a lot of projects in Germany coming online, invited to competitions. Right now we're designing a whole series of exhibitions in Germany for Vivitra. It's an interesting collaboration that they're doing with the Biennale Dundee. So there are international relationships kind of still happening during Brexit. Also, we found that there's some practice contacted by practices in France to kind of forge new collaborations. So we're sort of, I think they're trying to tap into something we've got and kind of make sure that those connections stay ignited between our countries. And then we're proposing to all bid together for work, infrastructure and museum work in France. So I think creative people find a way to keep connected despite kind of political barriers, and that's really exciting to see that.
Very good. Okay, well let's move on to the next question, because related to the pandemic more. Do you see face-to-face time with clients changing in response to climate change as well as the pandemic? Surely we can't go back to the same amount of international travel for business, but I mean, how are you planning things? Philip, will you be doing less flying in future?
Yeah, I mean, speculation here really at this point in time, but I expect so. I think, both as a business and as individuals, and it's not just our organization, but I'm sure every organization is challenging themselves a bit harder on perhaps what they did do before, what is actually sort of essential through the efficiencies that we've all got more and more used to. Can more be done just remotely, which obviously it can. And I think being more specific about what are those key moments that you do need to come together for, whether it's particular presentations to cities or whatever, or particular moments, work stages of projects. So I think it will reduce. It may begin to then creep up again over time, but we will see.
Any other thoughts on that? No. We've always worked remotely. I mean, I just think it's been part of the practice sort of DNA. I just remember presenting to Roger Maidlin, Argent, about 10 years ago. We presented a project, and I was in Miami. And it was presented I was presented as a disembodied head on a laptop, which didn't win, and that may have been a factor. But I think today there's much more openness to do it. And I noticed also, and I think, Annalie, you'll have seen that as well in Dubai, they were way ahead of their time in teleconferencing, and kind of they would just say, don't bother coming. And their AV setup was so good. Like, you would hear the voices perfectly. There were these really good teleconference facilities. And I think we need to up our game here, really, to match what's going on internationally. They also have a lot of interest in VR. And I think that's something as well. We've kind of brought VR very strongly into our workflow as a way of sharing design with people, and to use as design tools. That's something that those new technologies are going to become part of the way we work every day, and allow better collaboration between partners.
Very good. Okay, well, one last quick question. How important are international events such as the Venice Biennale for winning business, and have you missed these moments to congregate with fellow practitioners? Right, has anyone won a job at the Venice Biennale? I mean, maybe you win jobs by putting on a show there, but you just meet other friends, don't you, really?
I think it's about, attracting talent as well. That key point that, you're putting yourself in a shop window in those different countries where, young students are coming, seeing your work, seeing perhaps the way you think, learning about London. And I think that's one of the real values. And then in time, the talent and whether you get a job, that's the big myth in question, isn't it, as well,
I mean, I would say exhibiting in general is something we probably don't do often enough as a profession, and like challenging ourselves to not just exhibit our schemes, but exhibit design, right? Like push ourselves to exhibit design, new ideas, and getting them out there. And from 1851, Britain's kind of a great exhibitor, right? Crystal Palace and all that. And I think we need to do that. We need to continue in that tradition and do it better, because I think especially, I've spoke about young people before, but just getting new ideas and turning them into small projects, concepts and so on, and sharing them with the world is a great way to advertise a business, and I think make connections. I've got 500 business cards from Tokyo Design Week. Still, I'm still harvesting them. There are amazing people I met, and I think that's a really important part of practice that we forget about. Being stuck in offices.
Yeah, I think that's
so the answer is yes. Right, we are up to time, so I'd better call things
not Venice Biennale. I think that's the point. I think Venice Biennale is not necessarily the place to win work. It's not necessarily the right place to just, sadly, I think there are better places to show and to exhibit. Yeah.
Good. Okay. Well, thank you all very much for your insights. I mean, we've got to obviously up our game in terms of our communications. Maybe even develop our own housing to be able to house our staff who can't afford to live in London, because that's going to be a key part of really London remaining a design hub, to make sure that we can actually get the staff, particularly young, innovative designers, to be working in London, be able to stay here. So thank you, all three of you, for your contributions. And I'll just again say, don't forget to download the report, have a look at the report, and thank you to ACOM, KPF and UNI for their support. Now, not for the panelists, but for those in the audience, there is a little poll, and we'd be very grateful if you could just click on that and respond, because then that really helps us create even more effective program in the future. But so thank you all for attending, and thank you very much to our panelists. Thank you.